Hi, Alan Stratton from Utah Woodturners. I appreciate local wood turning clubs, and I belong to two at this point. I like them because I can see demos and look at other people's great work, but the other part is that they frequently have challenges where they say, hey, on this theme, bring in something that you have made. Well, the theme on the Utah Woodturners was a lidded box, so I decided to make this box out of walnut. It is a lidded box on the shallow side. The walnut that I picked is not quite ideal because it has this black streak through it, and that is dark, which I wanted, except that it comes at a cost, because that was a crack that fungus was able to invade. And yes, it produced a darker streak, but it also is a crack to have to deal with. There's a lot of CA glue in this project. But in the end, I like it. The lid has a nice heft, the base has a nice heft. The key to this one is making expansion joints. So here's the mortise that I used on the bottom to be able to turn the inside, and here's the mortise on the top that I used to finish off the very top. Very much like the last project, the large bowl. But let's go ahead and answer the challenge and make this walnut lidded box.
This walnut is a reject from a gun stock supplier. It has a vein of darker wood running through it that I want to preserve. However, that vein is also a weak spot. I think it was a wind shake that fungus has invaded. I need to be careful that it does not split. I'll get my CA glue handy. I'm going to need it. I marked the center and I've mounted the wood flat against my chuck secured by tailstock pressure. I'll use my large jaws for most of this project. I'm trimming the face just a bit first with my bowl gouge. Then I'm cutting from the side across the rim, cutting into side grain. This is much easier than approaching from the rim directly. This box is going to be an exercise in mounting. It's not difficult as long as I remember to cut my tenons when I need to and cut them to the right size. This first will be a tenon for a compression mount on the top of the lid. I figure I can use the tenon for a bit of swell in the center of the lid. The only problem is a deep void around that crack in the lid area. I'll have to see how that turns out. Now I can reverse the walnut onto that tenon so that I can address the bottom of the box. I need to remeasure as this will be an expansion hold. I'll be cutting a mortise on this bottom. I'm starting the mark with a parting tool, then use a gouge and a skew to remove and refine the wood. Since this may be the last time I have access to the bottom while mounted to the lathe, I need to sand the bottom. Before parting off the lid, I'll flip the wood around again. I could leave it there, but this orientation helps me visualize the split better. Parting this diameter of wood was tough. Cutting the gap wider than the tool helped, but I really needed a longer parting tool. It got tough hanging over the tool rest as far as I had to. Finally, I broke off the final little bit. This is cross-grained, so it finally snapped easily. I'll stop now and treat the cracks liberally with CA glue. Now for the box bottom. I have it mounted again in an expansion hold in that shallow mortise. I'll trim the side just a little bit, but then need to stop again for a treatment with CA glue. Now for serious hollowing of the box. I'm starting with a gouge, but with a flat bottom and straight sides, I don't trust myself to go beyond hogging out some of the center. So I'm switching soon to a square corner scraper. I don't want to go through the bottom. Good measurements are in order. I'm even taking the bottom off the lathe to check. I'm worried about that crack across the bottom. Time for more CA glue. The CA glue made such a mess that I had to rework the bottom again before sanding it out again. Now I'm making a couple of concentric V grooves to decorate the bottom. For this box, I'm finishing with lacquer brushed on and wiped off. I forgot to sign the piece before the lacquer, but I'll do it now. While signing, I burned over a little CA glue. Nearly burned my eyes with the fumes. I made sure I kept my head to the side to avoid more fumes while I finished signing. I'm using my DIY pyrography pen and DIY power supply that I made about a year ago. Then back on the lathe for another coat of lacquer after sanding it just a little more with fine sandpaper. Now I can flip it around again to finish the bottom interior. Next, the lid, starting with the tenon I cut at the very beginning. After a little flattening, I need to fit the lid to the box with a shallow, somewhat loose tenon. With a cross-grained box, I don't want a tight vacuum fit because any movement will bind it. So it's a loose fit, and it's my preference. With the lid fitting, I now need a mortise to use while finished turning the top of the lid. This mortise is a shallow mortise for an expansion mount. I'm not going to hollow the lid very much because I still need to contend with a deep void on the top side. Then sand and finish the underside of the lid. It turns out that I did not cut the mortise large enough. I need to expand it just a little, then refinish. Now I can flip it yet again. How many times have I flipped this box? I've lost track. I'm shaping the lid. It is a bit unusual to have a dip between the center and the rim, but that removes the void over that crack. I'm drilling a hole to receive a knob or finial, then sand and finish the top of the box. Now for a knob. I've selected some of my dry hazelnut for contrast. This I can mount directly to my long nose jaws and start turning. At first it looked too fat and too long, so I kept turning until it looked good. Then buffed everything and glued the finial to the lid. My walnut lidded box is finished. I like it, and the darker streak that came from that fungus streak. However, it took a lot of thin and medium CA glue to salvage it due to that weak line. It is ready for the club challenge. I like it. It has a good heft, meaning it has a good weight and feel. It does not feel heavy or too light. By the way, walnut is so nasty, I wore a dust mask most of the time under my face shield. We'll see you again next week for another wood turning video. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and please tell your friends. Always wear your full face shield. Goggles are not enough protection. Until next week, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. Let's keep on turning.